And you guys some distinguished individuals up there that made all of you from 20 years ago very, very frightened from going to the water. And it's all their fault, right there. They didn't make it stop. A few housekeeping things we do before we get underway. We have two bathrooms in the back. You need to use them. This door here or that other door, go right in the back, there's two bathrooms. When we exit, basically at 2:30, we're going to exit from this door and this door over here. All right, and we're going to have to exit quickly because we'll have another program, session coming right on. All right, but we're going to basically do all cell phones, please. Can you have those turned on? All right, and another thing is happening. This is a pattern. I knew this was going to be fast. But when you come up to center stage, we're filming. So when you come up to center stage, who's ever coming up the middle, they're going to have to duck. So they're not, they hope don't hit the camera up there. So we don't get in the way, okay? While we're filming.
Yeah.
We're going to go for about an hour with these gentlemen and ladies up here to tell you about the Jaws. And then we're going to give you a half hour to ask some questions. And I know you have some stories. I know you have some stories. Especially that guy over there at the end, Mr. Murphy over there. I know you got some stories. Because he's been telling me the stories for the last 30 years. He's friend of his wife, Susan. I just introduced the panel. We're going to go from
I still have that
my
screen.
right to left. We have Greg Nicotero. Greg's an Emmy award-winning makeup artist. And he did a great job with Jaws. We have Roy Arbogast, mechanical effects expert. We have Alves, production designer and second unit producer.
Director,
sorry.
that's all right.
And we have Susan and Lynn Murphy, those two over there. Susan and Lynn were the captains of the boat, the hauler, that hauled the shark and just about everything that was on the water. Lynn and Susan hauled for the crew. And at the end we have Joe Porter. Joe's a writer for Syntax magazine. And Joe is also an expert on special effects. Gentlemen, you have all these people wanting to know about that particular creature that's on the screen. And what I'm going to do is to speak openly, freely about, and I'm going to ask the first question. Whoever came up with that shot that I saw 30 years ago in O+, and when I put my hand on it and rubbed it, I thought its eyeball moved. You know, that's how big it was. I said, it can't be a shark that big in the water that I swim in. Joe.
Well, first of all, I mean, who came up with the idea of the shark, the size? Well, the idea came from Peter's book. And so, as I have said before, David Brown bought the book and sent me the galley sheets probably summer of 1973. And I did a lot of conceptual sketches, which I showed people yesterday. The conceptual sketches were based on the book and had more of a Moby Dick quality to it, with this huge thing falling on the boat and jumping. And so, you know, that was to show the studio what we had in mind for this project. And so they, the first reaction was, well, we can't do that. And so it went from there. I don't know how far you want me to go with this discussion. Okay.
Joe, can I jump in?
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things that a lot of people don't realize in regards to special effects is that it takes so long to put a certain sequence together. It's not, Joe and I were talking in the car about the sequence in the estuary where Teddy Grossman gets eaten by the shark. That sequence takes 10 seconds on screen, but is shot over a series of days. We talked about the fact that the shark would have to be put in place the day before, and then the next day when the crew came out to film, the shark would already be in place. And one question I actually have is how many people did it actually take to operate the shark? Because it's not just a one-person job. There was a bunch of different people pulling levers. So that's one thing that not a lot of people ever talk about, but I'm curious how many people it took to actually operate it.
Well, going way back, though, the question is, how did this all start? It started basically with the concept sketches and the in-house effects department saying that they couldn't do it. And Marshall Green, head of the production department, who was a very, I would say, a supporter of ours for the beginning, said to me, well, if you think you could do it, go out and find somebody to do it. Now, the result of that was, after a much discouraging comments that it couldn't be done, I found Bob Matty. Now, you can't say enough about Bob Matty. He was probably in his mid to late 60s, had an incredible amount of energy. You know, you felt he could do anything. He felt he could do anything. And so we started there. And I'll get back to that, Greg, but I think the thing that in this sort of a scenario of how big and and all that, it's a separate discussion. First, it was, okay, you guys go ahead and do it. How big was, after I did some research, and I think I mentioned this yesterday, I drew a 30-foot shark and a 20-foot shark, and because we really felt comfortable with a 25-foot shark, and that was what I had drawn, was a 12-foot shark, twice that size, because I like the proportion of it. As the sharks get bigger, they get fatter. So we know the size roughly. Bob had a concept on the mechanism, and now we go to what we call the Magnificent Seven. And I say this because we felt like Hugh Brenner going around and getting these gunslingers in that movie. And there were experts, and I can't remember them all, and Roy will. But Bob and I, and this was sort of a strange position for a production designer, because normally you don't get that involved. But because of the studio system, and they took it, they didn't want to do it, they gave it to us. I got very involved. And Bob and I went hands-on and met these various young people. One of them sits next to me. Now, and I remember this vividly, walking into the special effects department at Universal, where they did special plastics and breakaway things, and this guy was making these bottles and stuff. And Bob said, you know, this guy is an expert on the plastics. So that's Roy Arbogast. And he was the guy that I had to rely on for what the shark looked like. Bob was incredible junkyard junkie.
He was a backyard mechanic.
And if he could find a piece of something for a deal and it would fit in and it worked, that was great. You know, he wasn't like, give me the list of the most expensive things. He would find stuff. So I was always afraid that if he found something and it made the shark jaws look, you know, 3 feet wider, he'd put it in. But this guy had the integrity to stick with it. So I'd be off here scouting locations in Martha's Vineyard. I'd be gone 3,000 miles. I had to rely upon him. and I did for the next 20 years. So to start with, Greg, how many people? It was 7. And maybe you talk about that first.
I can. Lynn just pulled out this morning. I went to breakfast at his house, and he pulled out an old relic. These are the actual controls.
That made it work.
You know what that is?
Of the tow shark.
It was shifted over from cables.
That's
Yeah.
high tech.
This is high tech. So this was it.
This was the other one. Here, this one says tail and
Yeah, here's the
something
tail,
That's the tail.
and this would have maybe head up,
They were up in the master.
head up, head down, turn right, turn left, whatever. And we were in Lynn's boat. What was the name of that boat?
Valerie Ann.
The Valerie Ann.
Brown.
Myself and one other guy, Rich Helmer, were up in the crow's nest, way up high. This is a true story of the first day of shooting with the shark. So we're out there, and we each had a set of these guys, and we're watching it. We're going along, and we're so excited. The shark's working fine, and it's coming, and it's turning, and Richie goes like this, and he doesn't even look at me. He says, "Roy, do you ever get seasick?" No. And I'm feeling it, you know. And all of us, and I looked over, and he says, "Neither do I." And I looked over, and he's about the color of this bottle. And we're both. And I'll tell you what, that shot we had to get over really fast, because at the end of the shot, we were over the sides. This is what controlled the first shot in Jaws of the toe shark. And Lynn Murphy had them all these years, and he just pulled them out this morning.
So they've come a long way.
We've come a long way.
Pretty primitive.
I know people say that they call this the Model T of, effects.
And real quick, there was a bundle cable, what do you call it, with all the wires together, like old phone cable. And we had a large umbilical at 125 or 150 feet that went all the way out to the shark. We had to keep that pressurized with the nitrogen constantly, otherwise as soon as no pressure, the salt water would get in everything, and that's what really caused a lot of problems on the whole shoot. So it was for us it was a big deal. It was a real big deal. And but for those days, this was how it is.
And they were saying that this had never been done. And if it was done in the past, it was done on a set or in a controlled tank. Disney did some whales. They did the thing for Old Man in the Sea. And maybe it was more sophisticated. See, Bob wasn't a great sophisticated guy. But it got it to work. And you could see, Roy was saying he was operating this, and yet he was the specialist as far as what the skin of the shark. What was that, elastomer?
Urethane, polyurethane.
But it was it was a water repellent.
Well, in those days, up until Jaws, the best thing to use for any flexible gag or any of the rubber guns that we made, all the rubber props, was latex. You have to go through a whole process of curing it and cooking it and baking it, and it was quite a deal. So when Jaws started, when Joe came to me and we started talking about it, we were just being introduced into the urethanes, the polyurethanes, which is thousands of varieties, but this material and there was a new company just starting up in BJB. And we contacted them, and between that company and us telling them what we need, we set up maybe a third section of shark with ribs. And we started 50 different ways to construct this thing, just to make sure it would bend and not, and not show all the big wrinkles and what have you. So what we finally came up with was the urethane skin, like what they call a 34 shore. It's kind of soft, hard material. Behind that was a closed cell urethane.
Yeah, that's the stuff there.
Or a closed cell neoprene.
Yeah.
Take it back, and we glued those together because the real problem we had was to get the shark to be able to go underwater. So anything, if you try to pull something underwater that's 24 feet long and whatever the girth was, huge, underwater that was floating, you would take a submarine to pull it down. I mean, it took so much power. So the real trick was to keep the whole shark kind of a negative buoyancy, so once you did pull him under, he wasn't so heavy either that you couldn't pull him out. So that was the trick with the closed cell neoprene that, floated real well and wouldn't deteriorate, and then the flexible urethane that would.
It's why this science was being, created. The time element was incredible, because when they decided to get green light this, where we had a yellow light most of the time, they weren't very confident in the project until the book came out. But the guys started, I think probably in January, or when did we set up the shop? Was it before Christmas, or?
Oh, gosh.
Well, all the blueprints and
30 years
drawings
ago.
all have November, December of '74, so.
Okay, so what happened,
Drawing it,
when we got,
or '73.
we got the okay, and Bob made the initial, it looked like a hang wire, you know, clothesline, not clothesline, but yeah. the
Clothes
little
hanger.
Clothes hanger wire, about that thickness. And it was the shape of a shark. And he brought it in, and you pulled some levers, and it went, and they said, that's cool, that'll work, you know? I mean, that was it, you know, just little wire things. And so then what about this other thing? Well, we'll do a pole. Oh, yeah, something goes up, something goes down. So at the time, in a major studio, in the art department, I had a drafting room and artists and draftsmen. And so you go through and you select. And there was this older guy, Frank Wormser, who was an engineer, basically, worked at Lockheed. And so sort of the marriage between Bob and Frank worked out really good because Bob could talk about it and Frank would draw it, you know, and there's some of the drawings that are out at that exhibit today that you could see, technical drawings, and that sort of start putting hard numbers to the project. In other words, I was meeting with ichthyologists on what this darn thing looked like, and I did a 4-foot clay model, which he destroyed. No, it hung up for about 20 years and it started disintegrating, you know, in his shop. Anyway, but it looked pretty good. And then this expert came down and messed with it a little bit, said, yeah, that's pretty good. So now we know what it's going to look like, and we decide what size it's going to be. And we got Frank working on the technical drawings. So we got Don Chandler, a local in-house sculptor, great guy. I met him, I thought it was Night Gallery stuff. He said, oh, it was before that, it was on H.R. Puffin stuff.
I think it was the hamburger commercial.
I don't.
Singing.
Well, he was on H.R. Puffin stuff, and he started carving foam. So he started making. Now, you know, you got to realize we're building it inside. We got the drawings. He's messing around with the chemistry and stuff, and we've got a guy working with clay, and another guy started to make the chromoly tubing, I think, real hard. How do I remember that stuff? So we got this happening, and this happening, and this happening, and we hope it's all going to fit together. So it gets, you know, it fits together. And we didn't paint it till we got here, right? We shipped it?
No, we painted one, and we had the paint theory down in L.A. In fact, I think they were painted, the basic coat was painted, but then they did the finish.
Was that Ward's idea with the sand?
Ward, I'll tell you, it was my idea. But anyway.
That's okay, you know what?
What we didn't do was put a texture in the mold of when we cast them, because once I knew that we would be repairing 24 hours a day. So what we did was put a good urethane paint, and then we'd throw sand on it to give it the rough texture. So every time we were out there in the middle of the night, out here in Oak Bluffs working on it, you just give it a coat of paint at the end, and you just kind of sprinkle the sand in.
Ward took credit for that, and I bought him a lot of drinks for that, you know?
It was okay. It was all right as long as you had the proper bond from the two materials. Otherwise, any water would affect it. But salt water affected all the the mechanics and electronics, but not the.
I thought Ward had done that.
Well, and the color of the shark changed a little bit as well. When the shark first arrived, it was kind of lighter gray, and then it seemed to get. Was that just a matter of patching it and repairing it and repainting it?
That was probably just more sand, more sand, more sand.
That color, I'll tell you how that color came about. Ward came in, said, what color are you going to paint this thing? Ron and Valerie Taylor, who were well known for doing the Blue Water White Death, you know, and they're the shark experts. And they had some film, and at that time, the state-of-the-art was a KIM, which was a horizontal editing device with a screen here. Before that, we had these little moviolas, and Verna Fields was the editor, and she put that stuff up, and we're looking at the gray, and we're, you know, trying to, and I'm looking at the gray in the screen, and I'm looking at her KIM, and it was a nice gray. And I said, paint it the color of the gray, you know, the KIM. So that was the, if you find a KIM, that was the color that it was supposed to be. So Ward came in with samples, you know, Ward is always nervous.
Lots of samples.
You know, samples and did all that stuff. And as I say, he got a lot of drinks from me. I mean, I thought he came up with that idea with the sand. It was you all the time.
You owe me a couple drinks.
You're right. That was it was a great idea because when I saw it at first, and it looked like you know, putting water on a rubber balloon, it would just sort of beat up, and it didn't look real. And when they added the sand, it dispersed the water, so it gave it a much more realistic look. The water sort of hung there, or just sort of disappeared, which is, apparently seems to do with the shark. Where are we?
Where are we? The size. We want to know the size of it, and how did it, what were some of the mechanical problems? I can remember back in the
What's some of the
time,
mechanical problems?
The shark was off of the bridge. I think, you know, you guys remember the bridge, it's a big bridge. And my wife and I and my kids was out there in the boat, and we had the shark in the water, you know? And we were just, all of a sudden, we just saw this raft, this platform. All of a sudden, this huge thing comes out of the water. And we're about maybe 50 or 100 feet away, and it's scared to live in daylight instead of all. We thought it was a real shark. We didn't realize that you guys out there playing around with this or trying to fix whatever it was. First of all, how many sharks were there? And what were some of the mechanical problems we ran into?
I'll tell you about the sharks, he'll tell you about the mechanics. When we narrowed the thing down, still working off the big concept sketches. I didn't do the continuity sketches till we started shooting the movie, when we started rewriting the script. But we knew the shark had to do something. It had to swim left and it had to swim right. And they could tow it and it could wiggle. And looking at the film last night, I mean, there are some shots, I gotta tell you, when the shark was underwater, moving, it was great. That was the best. That was the best. So it was towed. About 300 feet away, something like that. But it had all the mechanisms, and you needed access to that, so obviously there's a big hole in one side, so that became a lot left to right shark, right to left shark. This gets very specific later with the sketches. When you order up for the next day, what do you order? Right shark or left shark? Then Bob, early on, came up with a platform shark. And that concept was why we're here, in one respect, besides the most beautiful place I can imagine to work, was the depth of the water. And let's say that's 25 feet, and we've done this before, but if that's 25 feet, and the shark comes up like this, okay, so it's measured, I mean, because it's on an arm, and on a cart kind of thing, traveling cart, on a rail, and it does that. It does other things too, but basically that's it, if it's here. Now, if the tide changes a lot, and you have a high tide, well, then you can never get the shark up. And if it's low, then so you're limiting your shooting on this particular device. So on the seaside shark, it didn't make any difference, it floats along. So the fact that in Martha's Vineyard you had a 2-foot tide was absolutely perfect. That was a minimum amount of tide. We could have never tested this thing or shot it on the West Coast with the tides we have there. Or even north. My gosh, you get up north, you got 4-foot tides. So that worked great. Now, what this shark could do was it could target. We could hit a target with it. the sea sled shark, it would swim by, and it was a little bit more difficult to bring it in. But if we wanted to crash or something or eat somebody or whatever, that was the shark. So that was the basic thing. Then I think, Roy, you made some fins, right? But
We made some fins, or like, we could mount on a big, what we call a shark sled. It was a long sled that the tail could go, or if you just wanted the fin, you could tow the fin. And that was a lot easier to control because you didn't have this massive, huge body to contend with through the, going through the water with the, going against the tide or with the tide or whatever. That one worked out to be very simple.
yeah,
And going on to Jaws too, that's what.
yeah, we used that.
We use that.
We used that a lot. I just have to say one quick on Jaws 2 was so funny. We wanted an over-the-shot shot of the shark, and we put Frankenstein on a Western saddle on the shark. We never did this on Jaws 1. It was so funny because here's the shark sitting there, and the guy's on a Western saddle with a handheld camera. It was just ridiculous. Stephen never quite. Maybe if he had thought of that shot, I'm sure we would have done it. 3 basic sharks and a fin, and the platform was a clever concept, which Bob used for the Orca too. And maybe you could explain that, and Lynn knows a lot about that. It was the barrels. It was also our demise sometimes, wasn't it? The barrels turning and the air getting trapped. And you want to explain something about that?
I'll let Lynn talk about that. If you can.
Well, yeah, these barrels that were under there, the original ones just had air you could let out and it would go down slow. But that didn't show any effects. And they ended up using barrels and put no ends in them and standing them on edge like a coffee cup in the water would capture water, straight down. Well, these straight down with barrels are about a 15 to 25 gallon barrels in rows, all along in different sections, could be tripped with just a lock that held them, but they had to be on an angle, and you could pull a lever on the boat, and an air solenoid would release them, and you could quarter it. You could take the stern down on one side or the other. You could drop the whole thing, and then you could give it a shot of air, and it would come up in a minute and do it over again. But the divers had to reset all of those barrels. They could set them in rows. There was a rope. They'd go down and pull them in shape, and that would be the control of that part of it. As far as the control of it on the shark was just kind of hit or miss on a lot of it, but we could steer it from the boat on the one we towed. We could steer it with its tail. We could turn it with its head, and we could make it come close to things or move it out. Now, that one had paravanes under it that you tipped, and you could make it dive and then make it come up. Like rudders on a boat to this way, this was this direction. And those was what made it go to bottom and come up.
That's what these did.
And everything worked. It worked as far as that went. But the tail didn't look too good to Joe because it would go boom, boom. And it had to be re-rigged. And that was when we re-rigged just about everything and rigged it up air over hydraulic. And Bob Matty was he'd pick your brains. If you knew anything at all, he'd get it. And he knew I was always fooling with junk. I was a good junk picker as he was. And we hooked it up with some old rams that came off from a torpedo bomber. It was up on the beach from World War II that I had the rams up in the garage for years. And that was the first ones that were put on that, came from there. And then we went to Boston and got them from Surplus Place for the rest of the things we used them for. And that's when that all worked good. But the shark would get on the bottom in the mud and you couldn't get it out. So they had to put truck tubes in there and give it a shot of air. And it would come up and we'd tow it some more. And that was, we just making things work. And by the time we got through with it, you could pick your nose with it, because you could,
If I may interject this, this is what's amazing. It wasn't like a bunch of Hollywood slick people coming here and here's how it's going to be done. This guy helped so much. I mean, and Bob was so smart that he understood immediately how much this man knew, and he was open to it. It wasn't like, well, I'm the expert from Hollywood, right?
Right. No, Bob was great.
You know,
Bob fell in love with his junkyard first, though.
yeah.
But you know, there's really something we ought to tell if you don't know this. Bob Matty was Walt Disney's head of special effects for 17 years or something like that, and he was coaxed out of retirement to do this. And he also won an Academy Award for special effects for Mary Poppins. So this was a pretty special man all the way around. And he was smart but very modest. And somebody told me the story about Walt Disney being on the set of one of their movies and saying something to Bob about, Bob, how much do we pay you? And whatever it was, and Bob said, you know, whatever the amount was, and Walt Disney said, that doesn't seem like very much to me, and then he'd pay him more money. But he was just about the neatest guy you could ever possibly meet, and you'd never know from meeting him that he was, you know, this famous head of special effects.
But still, what I'm trying to say is that even that, there was no attitude.
No.
It was like, don't tell me, I know.
No,
I mean, he relied on Lynn and Susan so much, well, we all did. And that was the thing about the vineyard. I came here with a painter and a carpenter. And the rest was done by locals. We built boats with the locals. The unions got after us a little bit. You know, the studio wanted us to send prop makers from Hollywood to build New England boats. That made a lot of sense, you know. So anyway, we got some...
Oh, no, actually, I just had one quick question about going back to the shark open up sides. Did that also help in regards to the buoyancy, being able to get it underwater and out of water quicker because the side was open? Because then
it was a place to evacuate the water or evacuate the air, whichever. Yeah.
Not just access. And, I mean,
well, you had to grab the shark from someplace. So if it's, you know, this is the shark, you have to grab it here to be able to, you know, out of shot to come up, and then come up this way or this way.
What did you learn from Jaws 1 and Jaws 2 as far as the shark is concerned? You know, mistakes and the things you had to go through to create
From 1 to 2?
Jaws 1 and then go to Jaws 2.
I think...
Weren't they all blown up? I know that. What was happening to the other? Did you take them with you? Or?
Yeah, we took a lot of the parts from 1 to 2. I think Jaws 2, believe it or not, was a lot harder movie because there was more sharks, more boats to anchor. You know, when the shark had to come swimming through, there was, I think, 6 or 7 picture boats, wasn't there?
Yeah.
So you figure out in the middle of the ocean, and you have all of these boats anchored with a scope. You know, you've got 100 lines out there, and they want you to coax this big shark through all this. That was hard. But I think what we learned mostly was to rely more on the toad sharks than the platform shark. We put bigger vanes on it, larger valves. We put a huge high pressure receiver tanks for nitrogen on the bottom, so when you hit the button, now it makes it go like this, and you could almost make the shark jump clear out of the water.
In other words, distinguish between a platform shark and a
toad.
toad.
The toad
was with the boat toad.
That's right. That you'd be operating with this. The platform was a huge platform like this. They, what was it, 70 feet long or something, and 40 feet wide. And you had a track, a huge track, and a large mechanism coming down that the shark would come along, and he could come up, do whatever, and open his mouth. And that's when he came on the back of an 8-quint. Shots like that, stationary shots. The toad shark was mostly used for the passes. And
Yeah, run-bys.
Run-bys, and you boom, 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 you see them coming, things like that.
And on 2, they nailed it down pretty much. We got some shots of 2 where it comes right along the sailboat, pretty amazing. So the control didn't make it any easier because the studio had a concept. We're going to make 2, we're going to make more shark, we're going to make, you know, so it just extended the thing. And then they threw, well, it was an attitude, it was different. I remember Tom Joyner, production manager, saying, you know, people say the shark's not working. He said, quick, throw money at it, you know. and that's what they did. This was a smaller operation. I mean, these guys work 7 days a week, you know, 12, 14 hours a day. I was sort of the liaison between the effects and the production office, and come to me and say, what's working? I go to Bob, what's working, Bob? He says, well, you know, maybe we can get this, go back. And that initiated, after we shot a lot of the land stuff and things weren't working. You know, I mean, when I think about it now, the bad rap that the shark got, people got, oh, the shark never worked in that. Dreyfus made jokes about it, you know. Pretty impossible thing to expect in such a short period of time to get this thing to work. What the hell? They didn't even have the script written, you know?
Joe, didn't you say that they had told you, some aeronautics company had told you it would take 2 years to develop?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you send it to Lockheed and see how long they would take.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to me, what's most amazing is owning my own special effects company and understanding that you guys built the mechanics at the same time that you were doing the sculpture and mold for the shark. You know, even the 6 weeks it took me to build the reproduction of the head was interesting because I had Joe and Roy come and sort of consult with the size and the shape and all the teeth. And the first time we sculpted the interior of the mouth, there was a miscalculation in one of the measurements. So the mouth was sculpted like that when it should have been sculpted like that. So imagine trying to build 3 of them that had to go in the ocean, and you're not building it all at the same time. You're just hoping that the skin slides over the mechanics the right way, and that the paint sticks and all that. So it's, I mean, a lot of people, the undertaking is unbelievable. And still, I mean, the shark is, God forbid they ever do a CG version of Jaws and put an animated shark in there. But it's an amazing piece of work.
In my travels interviewing effects people, I've come across an analogy where speaking about mechanical effects and animatronics, it's like, imagine if you're going to go and buy a car. What's the first thing you do? Well, how do we make the wheels? Well, we've got to make rubber tires for the wheels. It's from the ground up, and this thing's got to be up and running in whatever pre-production time you've got. So it's a Herculean task every time, and they were really inventing the wheel with this one. But I've always been curious, Joe, in overhead shots of the mechanical shark, particularly Ted Grossman's Death in the Estuary, how do you deal with not seeing the rigs, not seeing the sled, not seeing the sled arm? I'm not sure which ones you use for overhead shots looking down in the ocean.
With a tow shark, the overhead shot, those were great shots. Oh, you mean how you not see the fins?
Yeah.
That's it.
They were deep enough.
Yeah, what were they?
No, there
That
was,
was just the fin
it drew
one, I think,
11
wasn't
feet of water.
Yeah.
I had to have it in the shark cages, towing it out of Oak Bluffs Harbor, because we only had 8.5 and 9 feet of water.
Right.
And you couldn't tow the shark out in a position like we towed it at sea, because those paravanes were underwater so far, and they tipped this way and that way. Then you had your rudder type, the one that turned
Exactly.
it, and it had to be. It had to be. What drew it at 11 feet of water, I know, because my fathometer would hit going out of the Oak Bluffs Harbor. We didn't have.
Yeah, what he's saying
enough
is if
water.
this is the shark, all those things
Everything
we've
is
been
below
taught are way down here. So you have that depth, even in the clear water. Yeah.
Did a lot of it come down to Werner Field's editing of like different angles chosen for specific rigs that sort of sleight of hand like that?
It was interesting. Werner was the only editor I've ever seen who cut the film with the story sketches there. And most of the time they throw that stuff away and say, "Now I'm going to do the movie all over again." When we sat down and did those shot-by-shot sketches, Stephen and I, we pretty much knew what the shark could do. We pretty much knew that we could get an overhead shot, and we pretty much knew that the shark that was going to do this was the the platform shark, and we knew the shot when he's on the pulpit and it comes at us, it's going to be the sea sled shark, and when it on the stern when it comes out, it's going to be the sea sled shark, and when it's on, and so in other words, this is the capability. This is what the sharks could do, and then, so when we did the sketches, it would say left to right shark, right to left shark, and everybody would have a copy of these, and they would know we're doing shot 246A, B, and C today, hopefully. Hopefully we'll get A, B, and C.
The operative word.
Huh?
I said hopefully was the operative word.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So when Verna cut, she was pretty religious to that. Now, I got to tell you, she was one of the best cutters. I mean, she sort of trained Francis Coppola and George Lucas, and she was called Mother Cutter.
Mother Cutter, yeah.
And she was the...
She was neat.
Yeah, she was a great lady. And she was right there, with us. So it was those things, the sketches, the effects people, Lynn's group, and I said Lynn's group, these two, they would know where we're going to shoot. There was no mystery. This is what I liked about it, and this is what I really admire about Stephen on that picture, is there wasn't this attitude, I'm the director and you don't know what I'm going to do until I get out there and tell you guys. Couldn't do this movie like that. The thinking was done when we did the sketches, and then he got out there and he knew there was going to be the right to left shark, and he couldn't, say, no, I want this shark. Well, okay, wait till tomorrow and you'll get it. That's the way it was going to be.
Did you sail out with one shark at a time, or do you have, when you're out there on the ocean, you specifically had a day for shooting the right to left shark?
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that stayed in more or less one position, the left to right and the right to left. Once you got that on position, you just couldn't pick it up.
Switch 'em easily
You couldn't
out
pick
there.
that platform up because it was on 28 feet of water.
Right.
That was it.
We tried shifting it, and it went down upside down one day. That was our first mess up.
When it
for
turned
real
over?
trouble, when it
The
tipped
whole
over.
platform came up. We had the big ballast tanks built on each side, huge piece of equipment. They're out there adding air, come in. This is before we were shooting or anything. And all of a sudden, boom, one of the ballast tanks blew. The whole thing sharking all over, and all we could see
Upside
were the
down.
feet sticking up. Now what do you do? Those were not fun days. Not fun days.
Did the weather at that time in April, May, June affect the filming and the operation of the show?
Weather, they didn't know what weather was. We worked in filming when fishermen were still in their bunks. I was on the water all my life, learned to walk on a boat. And I never worked in weather like we worked sometimes with chasing that shark. We'd go out through oat bluffs with that thing in tow and burying it right up to get it to Cow Bay where we might be in the lee. We got it there. And it was, once we got it there, it was still blowing, but they could, as long as they could hang on, we kept working. And it worked. You needed some of that. But we have some of it, I see things that we have a little smooth water in the back where that's good, but when I look off the bow,
Matching water is an editor's nightmare.
It is.
Because, on the starboard side, it could look like once, and then the port side, it could be right.
Yeah.
And it has that effect. And I said this the other day, where, my job is to spot sets and things, and I used to have to spot this, where we're going to shoot the shark, and it'd be a big argument. Why are we going over there? Bill Butler would call me on the phone. What are you doing? I said, moving the shark over there. Why? It's because it'd be better tomorrow. He says, I don't know. And I said, well, what do you suggest? He says, that's not my job, And that was...
He's glad it wasn't.
That was, so I was saying the other day, there was a shot towards the end that I did, as I directed the little shot Stephen left with, a little shot with 11 kids. And I said, was sonar, I don't know, your boat has the sonar?
The radar?
Radar? Yeah, because I could see, it was so foggy. It was so foggy, I couldn't see the darn thing. We were towing the shark out, the shark sled, no, the platform. And we got these little dots, and it's 4 o'clock in the morning, and, you know, and I've got this dot and that dot, and I'm hoping that, you know, okay, and it's supposed to go there, and I don't want to see land. And here's the angle. And we set it down. Okay, set it down. It looks like we're between the dots. You know, and then it clears, the fog comes up, and the shark comes up, and he's right there. So, you know, those were things, you never do that. I mean, that's like, that's absurd. But what do? What's your choice? Not shoot? If we didn't do that, and then the sun comes up, it's a beautiful day, and they say, what are you doing? Call from Hollywood, what are you doing? Oh, we're sitting there because it's, we didn't get shark out. Yeah, it was foggy this morning. Why didn't you put it in last night? You know, they don't care. They're executives. They got suits up there. That's what they.
That was the Whitefoot, the big towboat.
Yeah.
That was had the crane on it. He had a radar.
Yeah.
And God, I had to, you know, going in towing 2 of those shark cages behind me going into Edgartown Harbor.
During the regatta week.
Yeah, with those big sailboats in 0 visibility. In the Whitefoot, I would talk to Roy, and he'd tell me where I was, because the tide is setting you down. You know you're going, you know, northeast, but you're also going sideways in the tide, towing them things, and you're only doing 3 knots. And the sailboat are everywhere. I mean, these are big sailboats.
Yeah,
they're coming up to the stern, and they, can I follow you? And they don't realize that shadow behind me is 2 shark cages. You know, I'm taking up 1,200 feet. With tow lines, and those shark are back there. I think, yeah, just give us a line and get him tied up to the stern so we couldn't run over him. That happened, and that was when the radar on the Whitefoot quit. The belt broke on the radar, and we got into the dock, and Bill Gilmore was new on the thing.
Yeah.
And when I got into the dock, I said, "That's it. If I don't have a radar, I'm not leaving the dock again if it's foggy, and if it's foggy, I'm going to anchor." And Bill Gilmore says, you got to have tools to work with, Lynn. Get them. And that was it.
Yeah, and that's what I mentioned before. Bill Gilmore was an unsung hero, because we had another guy on the picture, a production manager, who was okay. He was inexperienced. They promoted him, and well, that's what the studio did. He was the first assistant on Sugarland Express, Stevens Pictures, so we'll make him a production manager. And when it got to the ocean stuff, those guys were out there with dinghies. I mean, you know, we didn't have the Whitefoot, we didn't have Lynn, we didn't know, you know, didn't even have a proper place to work.
No.
What were you working? You didn't have cover? Nothing.
No, we were right down Oak Bluffs, right there at the bulkhead.
Had a trailer.
You asked if the weather gave us any problems? Yeah. Try to cure the urethane out when the sprinkling, freezing cold.
So, you know, it was like, when are we going to get serious about making this thing? That's what it becomes. You know, you say, when are we going to get serious about this? And what does that mean? That means spending some money. You know,
we have probably just about 35 minutes, and we want to give the audience an opportunity to ask a question, but Greg has a...
Yeah, I put together a little 5-minute presentation of how I built the recreation of the shark head that's on display on the island. And I can show it, and then you guys, if you have questions and stuff later, but just briefly, what we ultimately ended up doing was I did a sculpture of the shark about, 16 inches. And with today's technology, what we ended up doing, instead of sculpting the thing from scratch, I sent a resin casting to a computer company, and they scanned it. The computer read the information and then carved the head out of foam. They gave us the head back, full size, and then we went in, detailed and sculpted the inside of the mouth, all the teeth. So I put together a little 5-minute piece that shows that. So I'm just going to let that.
Oh, you play it there?
It's playing right. It's playing down. It's playing on the TV screen down here.
Who was the actual sculptor?
There was a couple different sculptors that worked on it, but basically it's the same concept of everything that these guys did, but on a much smaller scale for the little one. But the molds, just the mold for the shark head alone is 6.5 feet. The one that we created is all made out of fiberglass because I didn't have to have any moving parts. The only thing that's flexible is the teeth. And if you see it today, it's got 3 less teeth than it had yesterday because somebody yanked some teeth out of it already. So I called my studio in Los Angeles and they sent me a box of teeth so I can stick the teeth in. But you can see here, it's all, basically it was all blue foam. And it's the same as what the sculptor, for the original Jaws sculptor did. He made the base out of foam and then put clay on top of it. So once we primered it, and then we made a big fiberglass mold with the urethane surface that we could pull parts out of. So, you know, for me, what was most exciting about it was recreating the shark exactly. A lot of people, nowadays you can watch Shark Week and you can see 50,000 hours of footage, but back then there was one movie, which was Blue Water, White Death. There wasn't tons and tons of reference available, so these guys had to, you know, they had to literally use the one film that was around, which was Blue Water, White Death, as reference. That's why the shark has those big jowls in the movies, because footage from Blue Water, White Death, there's a famous shot of the shark chomping, and it looks like he's kind of got chubby cheeks, and that was the reference that the guys used for the sculpture.
I like the idea that the guys used to steal the teeth from Roy so they could go pick up girls at the bar. Hey, I got a shark's tooth, you know? And he could never find the teeth. Where'd it happen to all my teeth? I don't know. Guys are stealing teeth.
Well, I was fortunate enough to get castings of 7 of the original teeth. So we cleaned them up and remolded them and put the actual teeth that they originally made into the shark head to try to just make it as accurate as possible. So we sculpted the inside of the mouth. I mean, for me, having these 2 gentlemen come to the shop and just say, oh, well, Stephen, there was a scar on the shark's eye, and the fact that the shark looks like it went through a lot of damage before it ever started eating anybody in Amity. You can see cuts on its face and scars and get the idea that the shark's done some damage somewhere else prior to it arriving at Amity and eating everybody.
Can I ask a question, Joe and Roy? Did you articulate the teeth to work separately of the jaw?
It had a loose thing, and we threw
We
that
didn't
out.
plan on it, but the flexibility of the whole gum were flexible material, so when it did come, they looked like they moved. Right. But we didn't plan on it.
We articulated the eyeballs, but it ended up a little goofy looking.
Well, and you also talked about the fact that there was a big piston in the back of the throat that opened and closed the jaw, and you fabricated with foam the inside of the mouth so that water could pour through and it wouldn't catch in the mechanism.
Yeah, and you actually see that piston on Jaws too. On a great shot, we left it in there, and if you stop the film when they're pulling a little boy out of the water, the piston's there, and we discussed that. The shot was so unbelievable. I mean, it was scary because the timing, the kid was here, pull him out, and we were like, oh my God, you know, it's going to hit the kid. And it sort of squeezed the jaw a little bit, and the piston's there, the big ram, but we said, you know, it's so quick, leave it in, you know.
Yeah, because you see the nose pushes in.
I know, it was, yeah, but, you know, this is making movies, and if it works and it keeps the excitement going, you know, I mean, people are put it on pause. And want to,
yeah.
Today they can.
I think one of the funny things about when Joe and Roy came to my studio to see this was, first thing they did was grab the teeth. It was like, oh, these hard teeth or soft teeth? Because obviously everyone knows they had different kinds of teeth to put into the shark, but they just instantly went for the teeth. And
yeah, you put somebody in the mouth, you have soft teeth. But then it bends. Remember, we had problems with.
Yeah, then we went back to hard.
Yeah, we're changing all the time, bending.
Anyway, so I put that together for you guys.
Oh, great.
Let's see.
What we'd like you to do, if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask the panel, the center mic and the center aisle, just line up behind that mic and go for it.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay? And if you want to direct
one here, Joe.
your questions to anyone,
This is yours.
I read in a biography of Steven Spielberg that at one point when Bruce wasn't working, he had a meeting with Bob Madden, and said, Bob, the shark's not working, what's the problem? And at least in the book, said that Bob had gotten a cheap motor of some type rather than buying a new one out of the junkyard. And it wasn't producing the power that originally had been designed. Any truth to that?
There's a picture on a dock with myself, Richard Zanuck, Stephen, and Bill Gilmore, and we're all listening and very heads down, very somber. And Bill reminded me what he was saying. And he was saying, Matty bought this thing for, $35 or something instead of buying the thing, and it's not working, and blah, blah, blah. And it was probably true. It was Bob's,
Let me say in Bob's defense, we did have a really tight budget. So if you went out and spent $10,000 in those days for a proper motor, you're going to be called on the carpet.
Yeah.
That is for.
Yeah.
So I think there's always.
Well, I want to say this. The first shark cost $250,000. When I got on Jaws 2, and I had been doing another movie with Spielberg, they were building it at the studio, and they'd already spent $2.5 million. So
big difference.
Huge difference. They were just spending money like crazy, but on this little low-budget film, they had no confidence in. They were watching Bob's expenditures, and so he was putting it together with stuff like this. Yeah, that's probably true. Probably true.
I'm not going to name any names, but there are some effects studios that have huge budgets, and it's been known for a single animatronic creature to cost $4 million.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Steve. I heard that one of the original sharks is actually hanging in a junkyard somewhere in California. Is there a chance of maybe getting that shark and restoring it because it's such a
Well, I actually tried to do that because the junkyard is about 20 minutes north of where my studio is. It's cast out of the original molds from the first Jaws. It's not actually one of the screen used ones, but what happened was when Jaws came out and was all of a sudden successful, Universal wanted to jump on the bandwagon and make a display. So they created a shark out of the molds that hung at Universal at the attraction, and it was painted green and white. It was like the weirdest color. You couldn't
giant teeth.
Yeah, the banana teeth. And those big banana teeth.
Like big giant banana teeth. And ultimately what ended up happening was when Universal upgraded with the terrible sharks that they have there now, they got rid of it and gave it to a place in Sun Valley called You Pick Part. And it's a big junkyard. And when somebody said that to me one day, and I drove down and offered a guy $5 grand, and I said, I'll take it right now, I'll take it. And he said, nah, he just didn't want to be bothered with taking it off the perch that it was sitting. So when we did the recreation, you're not even allowed to take pictures of it. You have to sneak up. And I went in with my camera, and I had one of my guys kind of try to get the measurement of how wide the jaw was, so that I could make this one as accurate as possible. But it's kind of fallen apart. I don't think it's going to be around much longer. It's pretty bad shape, but it wasn't actually screen used though.
Shark that blew up. How you did that?
Squid.
That was at the end.
That was the stuff inside was squids, local squid we caught. Roy, I don't remember the head. I remember the head, the shot, but what did you do?
It was a second head that was Bob's main thing, but it was loaded with dynamite. I mean, if you want to know what blew it up, it was dynamite. And bags and bags and bags of blood and squid, and I'm not sure.
Chum.
And what?
It was
Chum?
pretty nasty.
Chum?
It was pretty nasty.
Smelled
But
good,
it was
huh?
dynamite.
They're far away from it.
Yeah.
That was a man.
I had a two-part
Yeah.
question. First is, was there ever a shark brought
Weird.
Was there ever a shark brought to Martha's Vineyard to film Jaws 2? If so, how much of it was filmed off the vineyard? And the second is to Joe about the building of Quint's shack.
Yeah. What was the first question?
Was there ever a shark, a mechanical shark, brought to Martha's Vineyard for Jaws 2? If so, was there any filming done off the shore of Martha's Vineyard? I know most of that was done in the Bahamas or down toward Florida. And the second question has to do with Quint's Shack. It had to be built and torn down shortly after the scenes were filmed. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Okay, the first question, would we bring a sea sled shark?
Yeah, we brought the big sea sled,
Yeah.
2 of them.
That used Edgartown. And the reason I chose Florida, because I was doing a movie for Spielberg called Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and we were in Mobile, Alabama, and I used to go to this beach in Pensacola, and it was like deserted. It was like 40 miles long, and it had the same kind of seagrass, and the sand was sort of white. And I thought, well, if we ever do a Jaws 2, this would be a great place to do the water stuff because we'll have a longer season. But what's happening was we were running out of season here. You know, it was always under the gun because seasons, as you know, you live here, it changes rapidly. In Florida, we had a longer season. And so that was the basic intent. But to come here and shoot harbor stuff, the town, and shark stuff that related to that. So that was the setup. The second question is Quint's Shack was a big political thing. When I saw Menemsha for the first time, I was blown away. You know, as I had said yesterday, I was a big fan of David Lean, who did these incredible big movies at the time. And I stood on the hill and looked down at Menemsha, and I said, this would be built for a movie. I mean, you would build it exactly like this. It was absolutely perfect. And I knew immediately it wouldn't work for the village, but then I had made a note, which I just found, that it'd be perfect for Quint's Shack. And so we had this empty lot right there, perfect. So I designed this thing, and we had nothing but problems. First of all, for various reasons, they didn't like the guy that owned the lot. I don't know. Lynn probably knows. I don't know what the inside politics is.
Have you got a couple of days?
He got a couple of days. I mean, there was a problem with the individual.
Yeah.
And so that was one thing. Okay. Then there was the height. I made it 35 feet because, and I wanted it to be outstanding. That's Quint. Quint is the quintessential fisherman. Toughest guy, he's got the biggest thing, you know, biggest house and all that stuff. And he had a killer whale in the back for Trump, you know. So I made this model and presented it, and they said, you can't do it, and we argued and this and that, and that's when they came up with the idea, okay, you could build it, but you'd have to tear it down. And someone who on this tape said it was $500,000, and I had the budget, I have the original budget of all my set costs, and we spent $14,500 to build it. Today, it'd probably cost $100 and something thousand to build. So that was an incredible amount of money to put down, and we had to shoot it and be out by June 15th. But I had no end of problems because it was too high, it didn't pass code. I had the selectmen, I went up to Boston, and the first day of building, I have these pile drivers down, and I'm going to put the things on piers and stuff. And one of them goes about this far into the water, and a guy pats me on the shoulder and says, you have a permit for that? I said, I have permits, are you kidding? And I listed, oh, no, you don't understand. That's a harbor master thing, and you got to get to Boston and get a permit for that to put it in the water. And I said, well, how long is that going to take? And he says, well, you know, it could take 6 months. And I said, well, what are they going to do? You know, if I don't get it, oh, they'll tear it down. You know. I said, okay, guys, go. You know, and we start building the thing. But it was, it's too bad because, you know, pretty nice thing. We've made a nice museum there, I think, you know. Wouldn't it have been fun?
Made a nice shop for me.
Yeah, you
I used the lumber in my shop. There's shark cages and that. That was delivered to my yard. But the shark cages, it says SS Lorino up in the top of my building.
Yeah.
Those big big timbers it was made out of.
Scavenger, see? There's another Bob Matty
Matty
there.
taught me. Yeah,
I'll
I
take the
learned a little
wood,
bit
I'll
more
take
from
that.
him.
Yes, that answer your question? Yeah, it was fun.
This is the,
Shark, the first shark that was caught in the movie by the local lunatics, and that was shark up to it's actually the only one that difference between me and a friend of mine. Was that shark real? If it was real, was it a problem for the animal rights?
The tiger shark that they hung up on the, yeah, they sent Freddie Grossman down with some people down in Florida to get a shark. And Teddy got one finally. And they couldn't get it in the airplane because it was so big, they had to take the door off and everything. So they got it, and no, we didn't hear about the animal rights. But here's what happened. We wanted a realistic shark, and it was smelled like crazy, and the color was changing. I had to send my painter out there to paint it. Warren had to go and paint it because it was changing color. They don't last long, right?
no, they change within hours. I mean, they change. You can watch them change color. When you bring one out of water, it changes color, and you put it back and watch them, it'll change. They'll go back.
Yeah.
You know, so they're just quick.
Yeah, so it was...
Real and smelly.
It was real smelly, yeah.
And Joe, was it actually caught for the film, or was it just caught and then they knew it was caught and brought it up?
No, we sent somebody down to get it.
No, you shouldn't have said that.
Go get us a shark. So the shark, yep, we killed the shark.
Florida, Joe. Bill
What?
Moore was just speaking. He said it
Pardon?
came from Florida.
Yeah.
I was just on a panel with Bill. He said it came from Florida.
Yeah, that's what I said. Teddy Grossman was a stunt coordinator. Went down to, and he ended up with this big shark, and they had to take this thing off, the doors off to get it in.
This was in New Hampshire.
This is a pre-production question that came from the last session. Carl Gottlieb said Joe was the guy to ask. We've heard Spielberg talk about wanting the blue picture and the only red to appear when blood is involved in the story. It's also been speculated since then that there's a purpose for the color yellow. And I'd like to hear from you if you had a purpose beforehand, if that was a production decision.
Oh yeah, no, it was a thing. You know, I love to play with color and stuff. I did that on Sugar Land Express with Steven, and we had like 40 cars, and each sequence of the movie that affected the particular police cars, I painted them. If they were comical, I painted them browns and yellows. If they were serious, hardcore guys, they were silver, and a very ominous thing, they were painted black. So it was this color tone. So I was talking to Steve, and I said, you know, if we don't paint any red, see any red, then when we get to the ocean sequence and we have the blood, it's going to really... And so, you know, everything was sort of orange off. You know, I didn't use any red, but... Oh, the prop man, Frank, I'll kill him for this. You know, the Kittner kid had a red bucket, Freddie's, I mean, you try to police this stuff. Making movies is about designing and policing. And so I go on the set and there's this red bucket. I said, what's the red bucket? What do you mean a red? What's wrong with the red bucket? I said, you know, no red. Oh, well, we already shot that. So, we're not going to reshoot it because of the bucket. So that's what happens. You know, your best concepts are sometimes destroyed with a red bucket. But the yellow, I painted the barrels yellow because they were black. That's pretty simple. It's contrasting color to blue, and the ocean's blue, and they would show up better. There was no theme about, you know, yellow being the color of canaries or something. It was just contrast.
Hi, yes, I have an editing question I was wondering about. There's ongoing debate between a friend of mine, a portion in Matt Hooper first examines Kristen's body, and he pulls up the arm and he says, this is what happens, and he cuts to another scene. My question is there a scene that leads in before or after that that's kind of not put in? Or?
When he said this was no boating accident?
Well, yeah, and he grabs her arm, you can see the separate arm right there, and it says, actually, for a brief second, he says, this is what happens, and it cuts real quick, and then it goes to him, and he screams at the doctor and says, this is no boating accident. I was curious to see if there was
You would have thought. I don't remember. I really don't remember if we shot anything prior to that in the morgue.
Yes.
and then later in the dock.
Who made the arm?
Yeah, I wanted to know.
I don't know who made the arm.
Lindell.
Who?
Yeah.
Lindell.
Lynn? Armstrong?
Lynn Armstrong.
Lynn Armstrong, the makeup man, yeah.
That's a great arm. That's a really good arm.
Yeah, it was good. I like the thing. Okay, yeah.
Why don't Captain Prince boat when the movie ends? Why don't Captain Prince boat?
What happened to Quint's boat when the movie ends?
Yeah.
Uh,
Did it sink all the way to the bottom, or it's how they're still standing in the water?
Are you talking about in the movie, the Quint 2? I mean, the Orca 2?
I think the same.
Like what happens in the story, you know, we just sort of,
Oh, what happens theoretically in the movie? In the movie, the boat goes. He's just, you know, he's in the crow's nest, he's shooting, they swim away, and it sinks, and Lynn Murphy probably picked it up and got the, it's sitting in his dock. He did, actually, he ends up with the...
I had the sinkable one, you know.
does that answer?
You're talking about in the movie story, what would have happened to the boat, or what physically happened to the boat?
Yeah, I mean, what physically happened to it?
Two. The second one ended up with Lynn. The first one went back to the studio, and they sold it to a grip for almost nothing, less than $3,000. Then they decided, and they threw the sharks away. They just put them in the back and let them rot. And because they didn't care about the movie, really, didn't really have a... Then the movie came out, was successful, and they were going to put it on the tours and say, well, where's the boat? You know, so Grip bought it. Oh, we'll get him. So he said, you want the boat? I paid $3. I want $15 for it. So he made some profit. They got the boat back, and it was sitting on the tours for many years, and I have no idea what happened to it.
It fell apart.
It must have fallen apart.
In the lake at Universal,
Yeah.
it just finally just fell apart.
I know, because some young publicity person, I was doing something for a recent thing, and they took me to the where the shark, you know, Quint Menemsha's supposed to be, and they said, this is Quint's boat. And I said, that's not Quint's boat. What are you talking about? So it you know, it
Yeah,
just...
I heard it just fell apart after a while.
Lynn, do you still have yours?
No, I have parts of it, but it just got picked to death. When I went in there, it was just like it was used in the water. It was delivered by the Whitefoot and set right on the shore, out of the water. It was all workable when I got it. All I had to do was hook the hose up to it, and the air hose. And it just got picked in the dark. And on the internet, it says it was abandoned. Well, it's my land. It wasn't abandoned. It was put on my land, and I left it there so people could see it, and they could get a shot with their camera from across, and I liked the looks of it, and I didn't really want to see it. I didn't have time. I had a chance to sell it. Someone up in New Hampshire bugged me to buy it whole as a tourist attraction, and I didn't fool around with it. I probably should have let it would be whole up there somewhere now, probably, but as it is, the last bit of it I cut with a chainsaw, and it's in the back of my truck, and it's flaked.
So if you have a piece or you see a piece for sale on eBay, just remember it was stolen.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of fanatical people.
Thank you all for being here today. About 6 years, let me back up, about 20 years ago, I think there was a couple people that sat around a kitchen table and thought that they might want to do a homage to a Spielberg movie. 6 years ago, that reality came to be. This might be blasphemous saying this in a church for adjustments, but I am adjusting as well. And the movie that they made, which I was a part of as well as my friend Kevin here, was called Trees. Trees the Movie, and you can go to the website treesthemovie.com. It was based, shot-for-shot remake of Jaws about a killer pine tree. And it was made at the 25th anniversary of Jaws as a homage to Spielberg's work. But I thought I would take the opportunity here and thank you for making a movie that really set the standard for that type of genre. And I guess a question I would have would be, did any of you involved in it believe at the time or have any inkling or sort of intuitive sense that the movie you were involved with would become what it has become, and that you'd be here 30 years later talking about the movie? And even more specifically, the scene that I still remember and I had nightmares about significantly when I saw it was the scene when they're underwater, and I guess it was a Cooper that comes up on the body as it came out of the bottom of the hull of the boat. How was that?
The head?
Yeah, the head.
Ben Gardner's head?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well, okay, this is a quick one. A few of us had a lot of confidence in the movie, but that might have been just energy. When you start a movie, you certainly hope it's going to be a good movie. You don't plan, gee, I'm making a bad movie, and sometimes you do. Sometimes it's, the director's terrible, but yeah, some of us really worked hard and thought this could be a success. This successful? No. I mean, no. This has been the most successful movie, action movie, or whatever, and 30-year anniversary. This is amazing. There are great movies that don't have this kind of representation. The shark, the Ben Gardner's head, this is a story I've been told many times. I clarified Carl Gottlieb yesterday when he was talking about the thing. And I recently talked to Bill Gilmore about it. We shot that shot up in Falls Lake, and it was murky, and it didn't work. The studio cut the movie and used it, and it was in the first screening in Dallas, and it was okay. And Stephen came to me, and he said, we had 4 screens. I think we could get 5. And I said, so what do you need? He said, well, they're not going to give me any money to shoot anything. He said, can you build me a boat? And I said, yeah, I'll build a section. We knew exactly what we needed. I had Kevin Pike, who was a local here, who started working for Roy, later became an effects man. He was working for Ward at the time, and he came to LA and was doing handiwork for me. So I said, here, build a boat. I paid for it. Studio didn't pay for it. It was no big deal. They stole the head that's on display, out of the makeup department. Stephen got a camera, got Rex Spence, who was an underwater guy, to shoot it. And we did it in Verna Field's swimming pool. She was editor on the movie, and we did it one night, covered the thing, and they murked up the water and stuff. And so they got that shot. Now, Bill Gilmore tells me he and Zanuck were in their office, and they see on the they get this thing, Jaws Daily at 2 o'clock or whatever. So that's ridiculous. There's no Jaws Daily. We finished it. We wrapped that movie, and not another cent was supposed to be spent. What did they talk? Must be a mistake. No, there's Jaws Daily. So they went, and they were pissed. And they were saying, that's Spielberg, I mean, how did he do that? Anyway, they saw it, and it was fantastic. It was clear, it worked, it was scary. Verna cut it in. We showed it in Long Beach. He got 5 screens. It was one of the biggest screens, and the rest is history. So, and I always say this, as big as the movie became, it was that small. It was that intimate to do something in your backyard, to get a local guy like this to teach us how to do things, And so it was big, but it was small. Movies seldom are movies this successful that were that sort of intimate in the relationship of the people working on it.
Just for time, we got a couple of questions.
Wouldn't you agree?
I would, yeah.
This is a question about Jaws too. Just going through the scene when the shark comes up and takes down the helicopter. That was pretty amazing. Could you explain to that?
Yeah, I shot that shot, and it was the most frustrating thing. I was directing second unit, and that took 4 days. Let me tell you, I don't know if I can say it quickly because it was probably the most frustrating thing. You guys know how you anchor a boat for movies? You anchor 4 anchors, right? So it's 7 o'clock in the morning, it's glass out there, and this is Florida, Gulf of Mexico. This is, you know, up here. It's going to be smooth out there. So you go out there and it's glass, it's 7 o'clock, you start anchoring boats. Camera boat, this boat, the shark thing. Bring out the helicopter. And I had this little Bell helicopter, and we made special fiberglass, you know, rotor blades. So, okay, get the shark going. Okay, get the helicopter. All right. Boom, helicopter falls over, breaks the props. That's a wrap. Okay, we go back. Next day, you know, same thing. Anchor, anchor, anchor. The water gets rough, it gets choppy. The helicopter goes like this. The shark comes. Shark eats the camera boat. Boom, and it's stuck in the camera boat. That's a wrap. It did. It got right on the darn, you know, bow of the boat. It just stuck there. It was probably you operating it. And it was finally, because this was a shot when I first read Jaws 2 eats a helicopter. I thought, this is a joke. Until I found this, well, you know, it is until you find a helicopter that's a lot smaller than the shark, and you see these pontoons on the water, and it's going like this. You say, you know, a shark might just be attracted to that thing. Well, finally, it hit, pulled the thing down. It was incredible. Except the pilot was a real pilot that we used in this mock-up, but he wasn't a scuba diver. So, you know, he went underwater, he panicked, the divers got to him, you know, and he was a pilot, he wasn't a diver. We got the shot and it worked out, it was sensational, but 4 days to get that shot. So that's the way it goes sometimes, you know.
Okay, last question. Sorry.
I have just 2 questions. How many shots did it take to do all the movies?
How many shots?
Sharks.
Yeah.
Sharks.
In all the movies.
All the movies. Can't speak about the 4th. Had nothing to do with that one. We did 3 sharks here and a fin, right?
And a fin.
We did the same thing for Jaws 2. Jaws 3, we did a very high-speed fin because we were chasing water skiers. It worked really well, except we almost killed a skier. That was just terrible. She fell into the thing, and I was just, you know, I'm directing this thing, and this girl, they take her off in an ambulance, and, you know, we just had a scene with a helicopter killed 2 people, and I'm thinking, and this girl is comatose, you know. Anyway, she just got knocked out. But it was this incredible fin. But then Roy built a bigger shark because it swallows a guy. So it had to be, what, 35 feet?
It was 30-some feet long.
Yeah. So that's a bit. But we never used any other big shark, did we?
No.
What about coming into those gates?
Just a fin.
Just a fin.
Just a fin.
Fin had 7 sharks and a couple fins for the first 3.
Well, they'll be another group that comes in and does all sorts of questions.